and have one voice. When we speak, the government will listen to us. So it's also a concern. We'll compile all of them and then we'll take it. Yes. Yes, and Doc, your question, just to run it up. Yeah, we don't have the police here because the contact that I have is out of town. But I think it's a good concern. Next time we'll make sure that we bring them in. The National Cybersecurity Advisor was supposed to be here, but he has an equally important government assignment, so he couldn't be here. So thank you, sir.
Okay, so Felicia, sorry, Vivian.
You like Felicia too much. I know. Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. So I'll start from here. Working with GJ, Media Foundation works with GJ on so many things. But we don't have a specific project that's on cybersecurity or digital rights with the GJA. But we've involved journalists in forums, in projects that are related to digital rights. In last year in March, we had a forum on cybersecurity, again on the cybersecurity policy and strategy. We had a number of journalists there, and we had discussions on our priorities on implementation of the policy. So we've involved journalists, but you know there are so many journalists and we can't involve all. So as much as we can, I think it's something that we will do gradually, getting as many journalists involved as possible. With the bit of the digital address system, I think that the whole thing about digital IDs, there are a lot of questions about it. You know, what they are doing with even your data, your thumbprints, the finger, the scans, the biodata that they are taking. We don't know where they go. And recently there was something from the EC about how people's data were with a foreign company and they didn't even have access to it. So it's a big conversation that we need to have. And I'm quite glad that the National Cybersecurity Secretariat is almost rounding up the review process. I understand that there are a number of institutions that are being proposed to be set up as part of the strategy. It was in the previous one, so I hope that some of them will be set up so that we can look at the bit about data protection more closely. The other thing too is cyber hygiene. I mean, we also have to practice cyber hygiene. How you take care of yourself at home, you have to take care of yourself online. If at home you don't, walk around quote unquote naked, you don't have to do that online. You don't have to put your date of birth on social media. Don't tag your family members where they are asking you to tag your relationships and then you put, this is your cousin, this is your brother and all of that. Those things are not necessary. And respectfully, the same way that you would talk to your child about not doing certain things, you would also, with your knowledge about the internet and, data protection, talk to your child that, okay, for this behavior, you don't exhibit it online, don't do this, don't do that. If you find that they are talking at 3 a.m., just tell him to go to sleep. Most of the time, they are not really doing anything bad online. It might just be a WhatsApp group, they're having discussions and all of that, or, other things which we all know, maybe he's talking to his girlfriend or something, which is not necessarily harmful, but it's about you talking to your child and also helping them, shaping them to be responsible, using the internet in a responsible manner. On the police and the BNI CID, again, in last year's forum, we involved them. The challenge with institutions like that, like Mr. Edwamanfo was trying to highlight, is you need to go to the top level person, and if they don't minute or ask someone to show up, they will not show up because there are issues of security and they have their own ways of doing things. I think that every now and then we reach out to them, and when they are able to, they show up. So I think it's something that is well noted, and going forward we will try as much as possible to involve them in any way that we can. In terms of your question, Mr. Komia, where do we stand? Mr. Edwamanfo has given a very good picture. For me, I think that in terms of legal frameworks, we are not so bad. There's a Data Protection Commission. There are other institutions that are working on securing the cyberspace. There are lots of things that need to be done. Ghana is like it's not the headquarters, but maybe is a branch of cyber attacks. There are a lot of cyber attacks here. The mobile money has come with a lot of fraud and all of that. We are not getting any headway with that. And there's another one on lotteries. You know, I don't know how many of you have experienced that. Somebody will call you and tell you that they have some little numbers they want you to go and stake, you know. So it's getting crazy and sophisticated by the minute. As we try to up our game on the protection, they are also finding clever means of perpetrating fraud. So we all need to be very alert and be very cautious. If you are walking around circle and you are holding your bag very well to you know, prevent somebody from dipping their hand in and taking your phone, do that online as well. Be cautious and be suspicious about everything, and protect yourself. Yes, I think that I would end here. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much. When Dr. Binka was talking about a lady's grandchild posting messages on on WhatsApp, well, my phone is my phone, not yours. Don't touch it. That's a rule in my house. You touch it, you meet me with my fury and furor, and they abide. So this is taking me to a recommendation we had during the IGF. The communique will come out very soon. We need to educate parents to educate their children in this cyberspace. You don't have to allow your son or your siblings or your what to use your mobile phone or use internet anyhow. So the communique will come out and they will see what we can do there. Concerning the one who spends hours on the internet, I have no issue with that. But the end result, that's what we are looking at. At the end of the day, when you are there, you are exchanging information. You are sharing information. How the other guy is going to use it. Who has access to your phone? Without even knowing that the person has access to your phone. So the social engineering program we launched, we had 2 editions already, is to create awareness in the mind of people, especially the younger one, to know how to behave on the net. We also call it human hacking. They will talk to you, use psychological tricks, and get information from you. The next stage we are taking it to is, we all agree during the last meeting to take the workshop to the regions to create awareness there. At that meeting, police was there. The head of cybercrime unit of CID was there. Most of the stakeholders in cybercrime were there. So we are working on it. Concerning the journalists, I agree that at times when we read some of their reportage, totally far away from the realities. So what ISOC is going to do, next week we are meeting one of our donors. We are planning to raise it with them and organize training for them where we'll take them through the technical aspect of the internet, including cybersecurity, in a non-technical manner. So, well, as I said, the main issue is the funding. Now, coming to your question, where do we stand? I'll tell you that we are doing very well. We are doing a lot, but it's not yet much. We need more hands, more resources, more strategy to really cover our country. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you all. I think the chairman would like to make a few remarks before we end the session. So, okay.
Yes, on the data protection, we have a Data Protection Act. I don't know how many of you have read, and the Data Protection Commission, I think they are active. So if you have any concerns with data protection, you feel somebody is trying to abuse you, please channel your request to them and they will assist you. One thing I want to say is that there are a host of laws, pockets of laws in there that we haven't even taken the time to look for them and then to read them. So they are there. Let's try and get them. Data Protection Act. There are a whole lot of laws. But if we don't read, we won't get to know. So maybe that's the more reason why we have to make sure that we form this coalition so that we can share some of these things. And from time to time, we can meet, not just workshop. We can meet some breakfast meeting and share ideas, discuss all these issues, put our comments together as a communique and send to wherever it has to go, whether government or an agency and all that. All right. We have Media Foundation. They have been in the system for a long time and they've been doing. So working with them, we can ride on their back and have a very strong coalition. Thank you, sir.
Okay, Chairman.
Thank you very much. I've listened carefully to the questions raised, and I've also listened carefully to the responses from the various panelists. And I'm satisfied that most of the questions raised have been satisfactorily answered. I want to react to the first question you raised, that what is our stand today as far as cybersecurity is concerned? What is our stand today? In his response, Mr. Aduamanfo Jr. answered that we are doing well. Our stand is good. But I think that we still have a long way to go. There are all kinds of strategies in various sectors of our country. And unless we coalesce or put together all these strategies to become one, we will have splinter groups doing their own things all over the place. So one way is to put together all the strategies we have as far as cybersecurity and cybercrime issues are concerned. I would like to put a question to the organizers again. What is the lead organization if we're talking about cybersecurity and counterattacks? You know, when the enemy is attacking you, you also plan to counter his attack. And I think that what you are doing here is trying to form a counterattack strategy towards the enemies attacking your cyberspace. Which is the lead agency in Ghana which is doing the counterattack? That's the question for you. The other issue I want to talk about is about the digital address system and then the identity card issue. We have a big problem with operationalization of the digital address system as well as the Ghana card system. Only last Monday, I went to the bank, my bank, to go and try and see if I can find some money there and cash something for my pocket. So I went there with my Ghana card. I issued a check. I put it to the teller. I added my Ghana card to it. No, convinced that the Ghana card is the best ID card you can find in Ghana today. And to my surprise, they said, oh, you can't use this card. Don't you have any other card, voter ID card or driver license? I said, what? This Ghana card in the Francophone area where I am, Mali, it is even regarded as your passport. They even prefer to see that more than your passport. So why is it not operational here? I said, oh, we have problems with verification, so the banks are not accepting these Ghana cards yet because they said there's a committee for verification and they have not finished with the committee's work, so the Ghana card is not acceptable. If it's not acceptable in the banks here in Ghana, then where else can you use your Ghana card? So these are some of the problems with operationalization of these systems. Ghana card system, and what have you. So I think that you should expand your activities. Acdro should expand your activities. I'm happy to hear that you want to go into the schools, you know, to involve the education or awareness creation in the schools so that the little ones will be aware of the dangers in the cyberspace, the use of the cyberspace. You need to also have this kind of workshops more often, especially in Ghana here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think you asked a very relevant question. Who is the leading agents responsible for when it comes to cybersecurity? I think government has set up an agency, I mean, I don't know, a center, cybersecurity center under the umbrella of the Ministry of Communications. And that is the leading agent when it comes to cybersecurity. They have the National Computer Emergency Response Center also in there. So they are the advisors on, so they lead. And they have the national set that oversees all the different sectors, the academia, the finance sector, so what we are planning to do is to form a coalition as a civil society, and then we will also be an umbrella or a branch to the center, so that if there is any alerts, they can pass on to us. If we have any issues, concerns, we can pass on as a voice to them. So the leading agency is the National Cybersecurity Center that sits under the umbrella of the Ministry of Communications. Thanks, sir.
Let's give a round of applause to our panelists. I think they've done a good job, a wonderful panel. It's been insightful. I just want to thank you all, my panelists, for this wonderful panel. Thank you very much. So, Ella, over to you for the next session, please.
Now, we're going to have a look into the models for the National Cybersecurity Policy and Strategy. Again, facilitated by Mr. Eric, who's going to look into it with us. Mr. Eric. A hand, please.
Thank you, Ella. So I'm back on the floor, and this time, initially what we wanted to do at this workshop was to look at inputs, and hopefully at a certain time it will become a public document that we can look at. So what I'm going to attempt to do is to give a little insight as to what a cybersecurity policy is, what to look out in a policy, so that when you're reviewing the policy, you can properly, look at it and find out what is not in there. So what I'm going to do is just give you some best practice, and then we'll look at a few cases from different countries to see the trends that is happening within the cybersecurity environment. So for the purpose of the discussion, I'm going to ask the question again: what is cybersecurity? What is a policy? I think Ken has already mentioned that already. But I want this to fit into my discussion this afternoon, and then we can see what to look out for in all the cybersecurity policies that we want to review. I believe that in the near future, there's going to be another workshop like this where we can actually look at these documents and be able to make the necessary inputs. So I think we've talked about what the cybersecurity policy or strategy is. All right, so I think we all understand at this stage what cybersecurity is. It's about securing our space. It's a virtual space. In other words, it's not a space that we can touch, but again, it's tangible in the sense that we can do things within that space, and therefore, we need to be able to secure that space. So the term cybersecurity is meant to describe the collection of tools, policies, guidelines, risk management approaches, actions, trainings that can be used to protect the availability, integrity, and confidentiality of assets in the connected infrastructure pertaining to government, private sector, of private organizations and citizens. So it's a mouthful, kind of a definition. So everything in there works together so that we can safely use the cyberspace. And that's the point that is made. And I picked this from the Guide to Developing a National Cybersecurity Strategy. So what is a cybersecurity strategy? I want to delve deeper into the subject. Okay, so we all know what a strategy is. A way we want to put things together to achieve a certain goal. So if you have a strategic plan, you are working to achieve a certain vision or to an end state within a certain period using specific approaches to get to that state. So coming into the cyberspace, we're saying it's an expression of the vision. So what vision do we expect our cyberspace in Ghana to be? A space where we can work without any fear of people stealing our data, without fear of people, attacking and trying to shut down our connections, etc., etc. So it's a vision and a high-level objectives, principles, and priorities that guides a country in addressing the cybersecurity issues, okay? So it's important to know that every strategic plan or every strategy must have an end state that the country aspires to, and then using an objective that we want to achieve and principles and priorities that can get us there. Again, it's also an overview of the stakeholders' tasks with improving cybersecurity of the nation. So we're talking about a vision, we're talking about stakeholders, and we are also talking about steps, programs, and initiatives that a country will undertake to protect its national cyber infrastructure and processes, okay? So we're looking at a vision, we're looking at stakeholders, and we're looking at steps or actions that has to be taken to achieve that goal. The last time we had a workshop, training workshop here, I did put this presentation up. I want to bring it up again. It makes our definition of a cybersecurity strategy much clearer. So, all right, so we talked about stakeholders. The primary stakeholder in every cybersecurity strategy is the government. The government owns the strategy, but it works with different stakeholders to build whatever processes and to work towards achieving the vision. So here you can see within that triangle, we have the national security system. Of course, that is a state institution that is entrusted to ensure that we are safe within this country. Then, of course, we have the public sector. And sometimes we confuse public sector with government. Okay, public sector is, the civil and public services that have been set up to work with the government to achieve goals or their vision, whatever they want to do. Of course, the academic sector is here, Dr. Hila. We have the academic sector. We have the economic sector, which is more like the business sector. And, of course, citizens. So we have the key stakeholders, because we talked about stakeholders and their roles to achieve this. So government has engagements with each of the stakeholders. They have to communicate with the national security system, communicate with the public sector, with the academic, economic, and citizens. So that's the first. So without proper communication arrangements, it will be difficult to achieve a certain national cybersecurity structure or plan. And then we also have the internal engagements. So between stakeholders, there's also need for cooperation, right? Government communicates with each stakeholder, but we need internally to have stakeholder engagements. And that must bring about trust and, of course, security, okay? So apart from government communication, national security must communicate with other stakeholders. Academic, civil society must be able to communicate with internally or collaborate or cooperate. And what are the issues that will be cooperated about? We're talking about, emerging threats and, of course, how these things can be dealt with. So, for instance, if we have businesses who are being hacked, or the data being stolen or different things happening there, they need to be able to speak with the Ghana Police Service, which has a CID cybercrime unit. They need to be able to talk to the National Cybersecurity Center. That kind of cooperation can help share information. And one of the biggest problems in this country and in many countries is that people are not able to report incidences as they occur. And it's simply because if it's a bank and it's hacked and it goes out, you know what happens in this country. Everybody's going to take their money. And we know some of these things. And as a result of some of these things, people will not actually want to go and collect information. So there is a need to have institutional processes put in place for reporting. Of course, within the technical community, we have reporting arrangements. Just like within government where you have different kind of documents, we have top secret, confidential, and other things. In the same way, within the security community, you have the same thing. We call something a traffic light protocol. Red means you cannot distribute. Amber, distribute with care. It's not something for public consumption. But if it's green, it means you can share it to anybody. So that kind of communication, information sharing, is crucial in that, in making sure that we can have a good policy. Now, so what are the kind of infrastructure that we protect? We're talking about critical infrastructure. Now, a critical infrastructure is any infrastructure that if it's hit by hacking, it will affect everybody. For instance, electricity. If hackers, I think recently, New York was, they had a blackout and they didn't know what happened. And I was listening to the news and they were talking, but they don't think it's this. Obviously, they have to justify. How can the lights just go off without anything? But if our electricity is hacked, we're going to have extended doomsaw. And that means that we're going to be in darkness. So that is a critical infrastructure. Critical infrastructure. The information that sits on that infrastructure is what we call the critical information infrastructure. For instance, your telco, they hold your data, your phone numbers. If somebody strikes and scrambles all the phone numbers, how are you going to be able to call somebody? So that's a critical infrastructure. So that protection is very important. When we come to e-government, passport system, if you can now actually get a new passport online. Now, if that infrastructure is hit, how are you going to have it? Of course, we are doing more manual than, online systems, so we are not. But if you imagine the north, digital north, where everything is driven by technology, if these systems are hit, it's going to be a problem. So we have different kinds of systems, things like public electronic systems, mobile money, all these things are things that they need to cooperate and discuss within this whole entity. And of course, putting all these activities together, you're able to come out with a national cybersecurity structure. So what are the elements that goes into every national cybersecurity strategy? There are certain common elements that you cut across, okay? First, we said the vision. Where do you want to be? Where I asked the question, where are we now? If we don't have a vision, how do we even know? How can we measure where we are in terms of securing our systems? And there are specific items within this thing that we will be able to set benchmarks with roadmaps so that we can know exactly where we are. So vision, we have a comprehensive approach and tailored priorities. It's important. We don't have all the money like the US, where they are putting aside 15 billion. What is the size of the economy of Ghana? About 40 billion or something. We don't have that kind of money. So we need to set priorities. We need to set priorities in developing our strategy. The other thing is inclusiveness. It's everybody around the table. In the early times when this whole thing came about, people thought that it was essentially a techie thing. The internet is techie, so you want to develop a policy, you go into the room, it's all techie people around it. Today we are talking here within a civil society forum about how we can also input. So what we are saying here is that everybody should be around the table. The lawyers must be there, the technicians must be there, the civil society, everybody must be part of this discussion. So when you are looking at the policy, you need to find out whether everybody's interest has been taken care of. Economic and social prosperity is important. Fundamental human rights, risk management, and resilience. In other words, the infrastructures, what kind of strategies are you putting to reduce the possibility of what will happen if there is an attack? You measure the risk and you manage them. Then, of course, the appropriate set of policy instruments. So policy is very important. In Ghana, we have a separate policy from the strategy. But in many countries, it's incorporated. So we have a policy within the bigger strategy. We have clear leadership. If we don't have government high-level buy-in and leadership, it will be difficult to implement. I worked as the national set manager from 2014 up to 2017. And we didn't have a buy-in. So you go and you want budgets to do basic things, you don't get it. But since 2017, after the change in government, the president himself has cybersecurity as one of his priorities. And so you can see what has happened between 2017 up to date. We have put in terms of institutional arrangements to ensure that we are on our path to starting, if we have not started yet, in putting cybersecurity where it's got to be. And then, of course, the trust element. environment is very crucial in the strategy. So these are some of the elements. But what are some of the best practices for national cybersecurity strategy? The first focus area is governance. Governance. If you're developing a strategy, you need to have good governance in place. What Ghana has done is to put in place excellent governance structure. Many countries, you know, there's still a debate who runs cybersecurity. Some say it's the national security, others say it's Ministry of Interior, and we had that debate. You know, when there was a change in government, there was that debate, who runs cybersecurity in Ghana? It was a tuggle. But at the end of the day, the president put his foot down and said, Ministry of Communication should take it. And that's the kind of thing we're talking about. So currently, we have a clear governance structure that leads everything to the president. So once the emergency plan is in place and something happens, the president can get to know within the shortest possible and make a decision for action. So we have at the top the Interministerial Advisory Committee that reports directly to the president. Then we have at the middle level the technical coordination. We have almost every entity that has something to do with cybersecurity represented by their heads. So we're talking about director generals, senior government people at that coordination level. Then we have at the lower level the national cybersecurity, which is the operational. So there is no doubt about how to move things. Anything that happens, it's easy to work through. Of course, these are new structures, and so it will take time to ferment, you know, the activities. So governance is number one of the key focus areas. Then number two, risk management and national cybersecurity. How do we protect our infrastructure? I recall we had a number of training sessions for some of the critical infrastructure managers. And some time back, you invite people from ECG to come for these meetings, and they said, well, our system is not on the internet, so we are not at risk. But after coming into those meetings and seeing the things that was happening, how do you transmit electricity to Burkina Faso? Because we are all interconnected, isn't it, West Africa? So if somebody has a shortfall in electricity in one country, we supply. When we were also having Dumso, Côte d'Ivoire was giving us, those grids that supply that electricity can easily be hacked. They use what they call SCADA systems. It's not the IP systems that we have. So, but people are hacking into these things, so there are special training for those things, etc. So we need to have a risk management framework across this infrastructure so that it will be protected. That's a technical thing. Then, of course, preparedness and resilience. If today we have an attack, can we be able to restore our systems? And that's what the national set does. To be able, they plan in advance, have a plan. So if something happens and it's a nationwide thing, the set can react and make sure that at the national level, we can restore these things. The structure now is that we have sector sets. So NCA has a communication sector set that works with all the telcos and make sure that they report these things to them and get them to fix things. And they report to the national set. So if there is anything, we have a structure in place to be able to, and that's what we're talking about, our preparedness. And there's also a plan to have a national crisis management plan. If sometimes you have attacks, multiple attacks, the banks are being attacked, the water systems, the electricity, and everything goes haywire. You need to be able to coordinate these things. And of course, you need to have a crisis management plan for cybersecurity in place. Of course, we also have the critical infrastructure. I've mentioned that. Capacity building, awareness creation, very important. It's a focal area that we need to look at. Then, of course, the sixth is the legislation. Legislation is very important in the sense that if you apprehend a cyber criminal, how do you prosecute that criminal? And that has been a challenge. You know, before we acceded the Budapest Convention, I must say Ghana is doing very well. We have acceded, I think, one of the few countries, I think 2 or 3 countries in Africa to accede the Budapest Convention. And that's a global convention for cybercrime. Okay, so we are there now. We have also acceded to the AU Convention. And these are texts, you know, legal text documents that helps prosecute cyber criminals. And, you know, because cybersecurity is borderless, you need, if there's a criminal somewhere attacking your country, how do you work within the global community to be able to stop that person or arrest that person? And that's what it's all about. So we need to have a good text, and I must say that the team from the Council of Europe who came to Ghana to do the assessment gave us a thumbs up. They said our cybercrime legislation, which is under the Electronic Transaction Act, is one of the best within the sub-region. And so we didn't have to do too much in tweaking it for us to be able to accede to the Budapest Convention. So Ghana today is one of them. So it's very important for us to have this legal and regulatory aspects. And then, of course, the 7th focus area is international cooperation. What does it mean? It means that any cybersecurity policy or strategy that you take, you should be looking out for things like this, because every one of them must have these things. It's the best practice. Of course, I did mention about the elements, and now we're talking about best practice. So I want us to look at a few countries, their strategies, case studies, and then we can have a discussion on whether we see all those elements in there. So I want us to start with Canada. This is their 2010 cybersecurity strategy. And it's essentially, there's a new one, 2018, but I wanted us to look at this, and then later we can look at that. And what does it say? I don't know if we can read from here. So they have 3 pillars, just 3 strategic goals or objectives. We have the securing government systems. The government of Canada increases its capacity to prevent, detect, respond, and recover from cyber attacks. So, okay, sorry. I just got carried away, so I was not talking into the mic. All right. All right. All right. So the first one is about detecting and being able to protect. So if we scan into the best practice, we'll notice that it talks about resilience and risk management. It talks about readiness. So you can see all the different elements within these things. That's 20, and they are getting results. So they have an M&E, monitoring and evaluation framework. And so they are able to see that they have declined. Since 2010, they've seen a decline in attacks and ability to respond. Okay? Then the second pillar is partnering to secure virtual cyberspace systems outside the federal government. And partnership means working with stakeholders, cooperation. Okay, we talked about these elements in the beginning. The third one, since I'm standing between you and lunch, I'll just try to go quickly so that we can all go and have lunch. The third one is helping Canadians to be secured online through the Get Cyber Safe campaign. Who can tell me what kind of element of this, what does this point to? What element does this point to? So these are the elements. Or maybe the best practices will do. Okay? So that's awareness, capacity building, awareness creation. So they created awareness so that citizens within Canada will be able to be secured in everything that they do. So that's a citizen-centered aspect of the entire thing. So we're talking about empowering citizens so that they don't do things that will expose them to cyber attacks and other things. Now let's look at another country, Croatia. So this is how their cybersecurity strategy looks like. That's the strategy document. There's the vision there. We talked about vision being the primary thing that we have there. We have the general strategy goals. So we're talking about the objectives, how to achieve specific objective areas. And then we have specific objectives of the interrelationships. Okay? And so out of that, they have this plan. But look at the next slide. It talks about the specifics, the things that they are looking at. So we have public telecommunication infrastructure being one of the key things. Then we have government information infrastructure, the e-services, and all the things that we as citizens benefit from. We have the financial e-services. Okay, financial e-services. That's where we mobile banking, mobile money, everything, they are securing that, and so forth. We have the cyber center being, and we also have the National Cybersecurity Center. And then you can see between these lines what specific things, actions they are doing. Protection of sensitive information, technical cooperation of the treatment of security incidents, international cooperation. So you see the elements. I'm saying every cybersecurity strategy has those elements that we pointed out earlier. The United Kingdom, 3 key trusts. It says defend. And of course, you see just 3 points here, but if you go into the detail of the document, it has virtually every one of those things there. So defend, the government will strengthen its own IT defenses and work with industry to ensure UK networks, data, and systems are protected against evolving threats. That's number 1. So defend, deter, and develop. So developing skills, deter is strengthen law enforcement capabilities to increase. So that's just a summary of the UK one. Now let's go to the US. US also has 4 main trusts. We have protect, promote, preserve, and advance. Okay? So protect what? The American people, the homeland, and the American way of life. So it's a people-centered thing, isn't it? Protecting the people of the US. Then, of course, we have prosperity, the well-being of the people. How can they do business online and not be attacked so that they can create wealth? Okay, that's a people-centered thing. Preserve peace through strength. Of course, America wants to always show that it's the superpower. So he believes, that's the belief of America. If we are strong, nobody can come around and mess around with us. So we'll build our strength and become a superior country. And that's what is there. And then, of course, the influence, American influence. The Chinese are trying to take some of that influence in Africa. Okay? Now, right, so, I mean, these are just breakdowns. But like I said, protect, promote, preserve, and advance. That's the American way. Now, Finland also has these elements. So at the top, we have what? Vision, and then we have political will. And then we have the overall situational awareness. So making sure that they have a situational awareness. And then, of course, the implementation, the competence. But notice on the left, on the right, sorry, we have making full use of opportunities. And what do you see there? Civil society, new business activities. So you see, this policy explicitly brings in civil society as one of the key instruments within the cybersecurity policy, mentioned in such a way that civil society must play a very important part in especially promoting the rights of the people. Yeah, so that is a summary of the vision, and you can see all the objectives around that vision. I don't want to go into those details. We're going to share the document so that you can have a better understanding. Now, the Netherlands, we have, they currently have a version 2 of the policy, and they are trying to show the difference between the first strategy and the second. So we have, for instance, the first strategy, which I think ended in 2016. It talks about private-public partnership. This time it's private-public participation. So the new policy is improving on what? The old policy. Now we are not just saying just partnership, come and sit there and talk, and then we will drive. No, it says now that both the public and the private will participate in the implementation process. Again, it talks about focus on structure. Then it goes on in the new one and say focus on networks and strategy conditions. And it goes on and it talks about all the different, but the main principal thing is that it's talking more about how people participate in this whole thing. So you can see the stakeholders, freedoms, so they are recognizing freedom of expression on the internet, human rights, as one of their key trusts within the entire thing. Of course, and then in terms of social benefits, so they're talking about the well-being, and they're also talking about freedoms online. So we're seeing different countries and their approach to these things. Now, in conclusion, what are we seeing in all these things? We're seeing that many countries are fusing policy and strategy into a strategic document. All these countries that I've mentioned, they don't have separate documents. That's moving forward best practice. And all the policies follow cybersecurity strategy best practice. So we can see that all the elements can be found out in all these things if we look at them carefully. Now, most of them are also infusing the rights of people to participate within this whole thing and the freedoms of the rights of people. We are seeing increasingly many countries. And the whole thing has been that in the beginning, most of these things were looked at as a technical thing. And so people's rights and other things were not included in most of the deliberations. And me, myself, I used to work with Ken. We worked on the first Ghana strategy and policy. And we were more like techie guys. So, we would not even think about civil society coming in. We thought that the focus was, let's protect our systems, let's do these things, and that is how. And of course, I believe that the review now incorporates a lot of the civil society issues, digital rights, and freedoms online. And then, of course, more recent policies have increased focus on digital rights and well-being, prosperity of digital citizens. And so we're going to see a lot of civil society activity and engagement in most of these things, and we believe that that is the way to go. So we should be looking out, for instance, in our new policy, if you have the opportunity to review whether there are things like that. I've had a snippet shot, and I think there are things on freedoms of expression online and, of course, digital rights. But it's up to us to see whether it's adequately addressed within that policy. Right, so these are some of my references. But like we said, we'll share the documents. The first workshop, we shared all the documents. Now, it's time for lunch. When we come back from lunch, we're going to focus on one particular model, which is the ITU model, which I believe was the model that was used to create the new policy. And so we're going to look at some of the thematic areas. And then when we have the breakout sessions, we're going to have you look at these things and, tease out the issues that we think this strategy can actually address, so that we can be sure that our current strategy will fulfill those things. Thank you.
Another hand for him, please. Now, I would like to ask, are there any questions for him? For Mr. Eric, any questions? Yes, please.
Thank you very much for the presentation. In fact, I really like the best practices, and I'm hoping we'll incorporate those into our this. But the one question I wanted to ask, not only you, but all the experts, have we also considered roving in, because we are talking about security, we are talking about crime at the same time, and human rights. Recently, I like using, because I teach, so I like using examples. My phone, I had a phone and I forgot the password. And I talked to my IT person. He said, oh, he has a software. You get it for me. And yesterday he called me, overnight he has done it. The same with a computer. So they have softwares that if I lose this phone, even though I have password on it, it doesn't mean that nobody can access those things. So people are not stealing. I mean, it's not like opening this. I'm happy, but at the same time, I'm worried. And I'm saying that we are looking at people who hack into our this thing and take our information or the information we put on the net. But there are some people also who are doing genuine business, but they have access. So I'm just thinking that probably in coming out with a strategy, could we consider the various category of people who are likely to have violate our rights or to commit crime without knowing that they have committed crime? One of them will be the IT experts and companies.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
Okay, so I don't really know if mine will really fall under the category of a question. But then I feel like listening to all the presentations that have been done, one thing that's kind of running through is sensitization. Like actually getting people to be in the know of the issues that we are talking about. Because it looks like we're on track, we have all the laws, we are rectifying everything, but how does it actually translate? Like I'm looking over at, I'm sorry, what's your name? Leia. Her laptop, and I can see there's like a small thing over her camera. And it's like in the movies, how people just turn it on, and then they are looking at things that you're doing. It's like a very small thing, but something that can actually create something that can make a huge impact. So then how are we actually getting across to make sure that the little things that we can do personally, because then the cyber attacks are going to be made through individual computers, laptops, whatnot. So then it comes down to how we are engaging each other to make sure that sensitization is actually going to happen. Like now that we are here and you're talking about engaging schools and whatnot and so on, how are we finding civil society groups that have more access to these spaces to ensure that when you're engaging the schools, you're actually getting to every child? Because there might be an organization that's more out there, if I'm making sense. Maybe their speciality will give them some kind of coverage that Acdro will not necessarily have. So then it comes down to partnership, and I mean, I'm repeating this over and over again, but sensitization, yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions, please? Yes, sir.
Okay, now to continue from this lady's question on the skills, knowledge, skills to do A, B, C, D. Sorry, Binker. Oh, okay, Dr. Binker. Sorry, I'm sorry. Yeah. Hacking could be ethical or non-ethical. Okay. The question I would want to ask is, do we have hacking institutions where I too could go and learn the skills of hacking? So that, of course, I know I'm an ethical person, so that I develop the skills. But in that school, how will they know whether I'm the ethical type? Is that school for everybody? Is that school for anybody? Because the skills gap is enormous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. I think, let me start with Dr. Benker's question. How do we ensure? Yes, there are tools. There are tools for everything. But there are different state institutions that have been empowered to do different things. For instance, if you go to national security, they have tools to be able to do more things because they are supposed to ensure national security. But if somebody who is your IT person has those tools to do things that he's not authorized, he might be going against the law. But let me also tell you that as part of the whole process of, updating, there is also a cybersecurity law which has been drafted. And we're going to have all these things in, including Dr. Acdro's submission. Because we have a number of schools that you can do ethical hacking. You can just walk in there, but do we even do background checks? How do we ensure that these people are controlled? And these are all things that we are going to see in the cybersecurity law. This time it's law. What we have now is the cybercrime law, which is in the Electronic Transaction Act. But there is now, in draft, the things that will state clearly what people can do and what they cannot do, for which, if you go beyond, you are infringing the law. Because if you are not authorized to be able to go beyond and do certain things, for instance, the police CID could be given powers to have tools to be able to track people on social media who are impersonating, because it's going to help cybersecurity. They are going to be, because people just create, somebody's account and pretend to be that person, and especially our ministers and MPs have suffered a lot of this. And they're raising funds. I am so-and-so MP, and they'll put their picture there. How do you even grab them? We don't even have that skill. But when the law comes into place and it says, because we want to do ABC, that's our policy objective, we want to empower these people to use all tools available to be able to do ABC. So we're going to see that in the cyber law that is upcoming. Now, as regard to your question in terms of how uniform, there are some people out there, more out there than others. Last year, during the Cybersecurity Month, the Vice President launched an initiative, a Safer Ghana initiative. That initiative is for 5 years. And there are five thematic, is it four? We have the business, we have children, we have the citizens, and then we have government. Now, this is where a lot of civil society engagements, especially if you are in the area, for instance, of Child Online, very soon it's going to be possible to partner with the National Cybersecurity Center and work in the areas like going out to the schools and doing things for within that area. So if you have international partners that you work with, then you can scope out something and work within those areas. So the opportunity very soon is going to be made available to any NGO or any organization that is within the children or rights area who wants to do specific things within these four thematic areas to be able to go out there, partner or register with the Cybersecurity Center and work within those areas. So those things are will increasingly become available once the new policy and strategy is put in place, and then the cyber law also comes into force. I don't know whether you still have anything. Yeah. Are we hungry? Okay, so any more questions? I can see we are all happy and satisfied. So what's the housekeeping announcements? Where are we having lunch? Just across. All right, so enjoy your lunch. Yep.
So those of you like Banku, I've seen some big bowls. so it's just right across the hallway. So we, I think it's an hour. It's supposed to be an hour, but I'm sure if we can do a little quick so that we can, maybe 45 minutes or so that we can run out real quick. Thank you so much. So bon appetit.